welcome to the Free Cheese episode 525. I'm your Joe Dex, joined by Matt Sellner.
Hello.
The Free Cheese is a weekly video game podcast about video games, brought to you once a week by thefreecheese.com. We will continue building the list this week, adding Capcom's 1989 survival horror classic, Sweet Home, to the list. Before that, Matt, I want to know, if you were a video game character in a survival horror video game, which key item would the player find in your pocket?
I feel like Jill's trusty lockpick is very clutch, because for some reason, during the zombie apocalypse, half the doors in an area are locked.
And you feel like you'd be the one who brought a lockpick from home.
If you can get through those doors, that's where you'll find your grenade launchers.
Do you have experience with a lockpick?
No, but I'm sure I'll learn.
I
understand the concept. Yeah, I've watched there's a YouTube video called Lockpicking Lawyer. Very interesting video. It has like little 3-minute videos saying why every lock you buy is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I've seen how a lock works. Like, I understand the idea behind it. I understand how lock picking works. I don't think I've ever successfully done it outside of, like, you know, a bathroom door lock or something that you pop open to scare a friend or something. But yeah, I don't know what I'd have. If I think about the only thing that I have in my pocket or on my person when I leave the house, it's like a phone or a wallet, but that doesn't really help you in a survival horror situation. Can we say skateboard? Because I always have a skateboard in the trunk of the car.
I mean, it's not going to really fit in your pocket, but then again, what items do fit for real in a survival horror character's pocket?
True. Yeah, a vacuum didn't fit in Asuka's pocket, necessarily, that we know of. Just dragging it through the hallways.
No.
Well, we will discuss more on Asuka's vacuum shortly, but first let's introduce this week's video game, Sweet Home, developed by Capcom, published by Capcom, released for the Famicom on December 14th, 1989, exclusively in Japan. It never made its way outside of Japan. The back of the box, because it never made its way outside of Japan, is fully in Japanese. However, a rough translation of the back of the box reads as follows. I wonder how many people can escape alive. The Cursed Mansion, Mamiya's residence. A number of fears attacking the staff of 5 TV stations. I don't think that's correct. I think it's 5 staff from a TV station who visited this mansion where no one lives anymore. The door closes, the ceiling collapses, and the spirit of the Mamiya family appears. The battle of the 5 people began in search of an exit. Will they be able to find an exit? How many people can get out of this mansion alive? I guess broadly speaking, to expound on it a little bit more, because it's kind of light, I think. You follow 5 members of a group entering a secluded mansion. There's rumors that there are valuable paintings to find inside, specifically frescoes, which I learned what a fresco was in the process of playing this. How about you?
I didn't bother to look it up.
So a fresco, not only did I look it up, I looked up the definition of it, that I don't seem to have right in front.
Isn't it also a soda?
That's a fresca.
Fresca. Ah, okay.
Yes. But the fresco, it's essentially a painting that is done on a wall, but specifically the word, it's the Italian word for fresh, fresco. And the reason that they called these paintings frescoes is because they were done on recently wet limestone. So it's a very specific wall type and paint that, that's...
Got it.
But when you think of the Sistine Chapel or things of that nature, that is a fresco. So in our game Sweet Home here, these 5 members of the group are headed to the mansion of famous painter Mamiya Ichiru. Basically, there's rumor that he has a bunch of paintings that never saw the light of day that are inside of the house because he painted them on the walls. The investigators decide to take pictures of the frescoes, and upon entering the mansion, a ghost-like figure of Mamiya, this is not the painter but his wife, appears and threatens them. After that, they find themselves trapped in the mansion, and the heroes must find a way out of the mansion. This is a mess. All of these descriptions, like, they're just sort of like fan-made transcriptions and things like that. The key here is that, again, the game was never released outside of Japan, so there's been 2 major English releases. One in 2002, I believe, which was the Gaijin translation, and then 2016, which is the Siege translation, which that's the version that Matt and I both played for this. It seems to, in that version, correct some of the localization mistakes that were made in the previous English translation, fan translation, but it also seeks to add in-game clues to progress through the story. The game itself does not tell you a whole lot. You're almost even with a version that is translated to give you clues internally, it's pretty much required you should play this game with a guide open. We should also point out that the game is not just a tie-in to a movie, but was co-developed with the production of a movie of the same title, of the same plot and premise. Having watched the movie and played through the game, the story beats play out a little bit differently. Not to spoil the movie, but the game, you can escape with everyone alive. The movie, not so much. But the plot is generally the same, which we'll dive into some of the details as we go about kind of maybe why this mansion is haunted. All that's in the movie, and I actually found there's some pretty cool moments, visually speaking, that happen in the movie that also happen in the game that I didn't expect them to be translated so one-to-one, and definitely not, in the Famicom. I think that's, Matt, is there anything else to set up Sweet Home for the listener if they've not played or heard of Sweet Home?
I think you hit it.
That's kind of the background of it. The game, broadly speaking, requires the player move through the mansion to find keys that unlock doors. And after unlocking those doors, you'll find new keys for new doors that you'll be able to unlock, all the while battling enemies, solving puzzles, and revealing the secret of the house. There are 5 different endings for the video game, depending on who survives. Matt, what was your first impression while playing Sweet
Home? So I kind of had to do this twice in a way. The first time I booted it went right into that intro scene when the roof collapses into the front door, and I didn't know the dialogue because, again, I didn't have access to a manual to really set up the game like you just did. But I got through that. I was a little confused, a little flustered onto what was going on, and then I decided pop on that movie. And I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched about 30 minutes of it. And then I got to know the characters enough and kind of see what the setup to the plot here was. And then after doing that, I immediately came back down and started playing it again. And it clicked. I knew going in this was NES, so I knew there was going to be some backwards types of mechanics and things like that. Took a couple tries to figure out some stuff, but no, once I got going, this was a delight to play until I stopped playing.
More on that later. Yeah, I also found that having watched the movie made the characters make a lot more sense. Found it really difficult. I got to know them by their item type, initially playing through this. You just kind of know, Kazuo is the guy with the lighter. Got it. Emi's the one with the key. Got it. But you don't really realize that Kazuo is Emi's father, right? Or, the relationship of these characters until you when you watch the movie, like you can very easily put a face to these little 16 by 16 sprites and a different level of character, right? Like the Taguchi in the movie is kind of like a pervert, and you don't really get that from the game so much, right? Like he's just a dude with a camera. And they all kind of fit into different stereotypes, but I don't think you get that from the game itself. So you really do kind of have to play and watch in tandem.
And you also understand why, like, a key item for a character is a vacuum. It's not just out of context.
Yeah.
It makes sense once you see how the staff work in the movie to uncover the frescoes.
Exactly. Yeah. The first time they do it in the movie, there's just dust covering the walls, and hey, look at that! A vacuum will reveal the right. Like when you do it in the game, I guess the first time you encounter a fresco in the game, it's not covered in dust. I feel like the first time I had to use a vacuum was just the glass and broken glass on the stairs, right? So yeah, there's 5 characters. We've talked about them. Let's break down kind of who they are and what they come equipped with. So Taguchi has a camera, and the camera is used to photograph the frescoes. And as you take pictures of the frescoes, again, this is difficult to know if this is in the original or not, but as you take pictures of the frescoes, you're given hints about where to go or what to do next, right? Or you're given some sort of background of what the painting is about, and that kind of starts to fill in a bit of the story, right? Asuka has a vacuum cleaner, which later can be used to uncover some of the dusty frescoes, but also you might come across a stairwell that's covered in broken glass, and you can use the vacuum cleaner to clean up the glass. Kazuo has a lighter because in the movie he smokes, so he's got a lighter in the game, which the lighter can be used to light candles that you carry around or burn rope that might be blocking the way. It's also great against defeating certain enemy types, like maggots. Akiko has a med kit, which I believe in the version we played is known as the remedy. But in other versions, it's called the med kit, and I kind of like the idea of it being called a med kit better. I think that's just more video gamey. But that will help to heal the party. Not only heal the party of its health points, but also its prayer points, which we'll talk about prayer a bit later on. And finally, Emi-chan has the key. So outside of finding very specific keys for specific doors, general purpose locked doors can be unlocked with Emi's key. So each of these items provides some sort of gameplay mechanic that allows the party to progress through the mansion, and they can, of course, in most cases, be used in combat. Some of them have strengths against different types of enemies. We did talk about characters dying in the game. So characters can die, and if they die, they're permanently dead. You cannot revive them. The only thing you can do is reload a save, which this game, and I believe even on the Famicom, not just because of the fan translation, but this game has an in-game save that you can save anywhere in the mansion, which is fantastic. So barring, you reloading a save, if a character dies, a character dies. However, should a character die, because each of them are tied so strongly to one of these key items that you can't swap that key item out from that character, but you can find items within the mansion that replace the function of that. So you'll find a flashlight that can replace, well, the flashlight kind of is different, right? Because you have to use like the lighter and a candle, but yeah, you can replace that. But I guess like instead of a vacuum, you can find a broom, for example.
Wasn't the key like a string or something like that?
Right. There's different things.
Pills instead of the remedy.
Pills instead of the remedy. Yeah, exactly. And then, do the pills only recover prayer? I can't remember now.
I was under the impression that the remedy or the pills only took out like curse or whatever. I don't even think it took out. I don't even think it helped with health. Really?
Oh, okay. Maybe what am I thinking? Oh, right. I'm so sorry. You are right. Yes, I'm thinking of the tonics you find. My gosh. Yeah, so the med kit or remedy that Akiko has just removes curse. That's correct. Yeah, it does not restore prayer.
Or poison, or there's a couple status effects.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, good point. Sorry. but you can find those other alternative items, and really generally as you move through the mansion, you're finding different items. How did you go about managing inventory in the game?
Crapshoot. Hope I kind of found myself. I had like a party of 2 and a party of 3. And I'm forgetting the names already. Taguchi's Mr. or who's the vacuum? I forgot the names already.
Asuka.
Had Asuka, Emi, and Kazuo.
Yeah.
Kazu probably. Had them for like traversal because they just like the lighter burn the ropes that got in your way. They had the vacuum for the glass, and of course Emi to unlock doors. So that was kind of like my core party. And then I would like try to my best to like manage the items once I kind of found out like how limited you actually are. And I would try to like meet halfway for these other 2 party members that were, especially as the game went along, got under and under and under leveled because I wasn't using them.
Yes. Yeah.
I do like the one battle mechanic call. Actually is kind of clutch in some of those
do you want to explain
instances.
That one?
Yeah, so I guess just the regular battle system itself, it is random encounters. So think Pokemon. You're out in the wild and Pokemon appears, pops up on the screen. And then it's turn-based. And luckily for the player, in what is already a hard game, you go first every turn. Yeah, you have attack. You kind of mentioned prey, but prey is kind of like magic in this. It's not really, it's just prey. There's no like, it's not like prey points for fire, ice, whatever. You just prey and it does like some kind of like magic damage. And it comes into play in other aspects of puzzles later in the game too, but you can use it in battle. There's a run option, an item option, and then there's a call option. So if you get yourself into trouble, something a little overpowered, and you're having issues running away, you can call, and it will actually cut to the other, whoever you call to. So if they're in a team, it will bring the whole team. If they're by themselves, or however you have your teams configured, it will cut to them, and you have the opportunity to bring that person into the battle. And what, you can only break out the teams of max 3, but this allows all 5 to actually battle against the same enemy. So that way you can split the experience, each way if you wanted. I didn't think to do that until much later. But yeah, no, that was an interesting feature. So like that way, like if I did have this party of 2 that was just always underleveled, I could call, and yeah, they might eat a hit or 2, but I can usually get my more my beefier characters back there in time before they really start getting hit hard.
Yeah, because it's straight up. This reminded me visually the battle system of just Dragon Quest. Like it is straight up black box. If you played Mother 1, like this is that exact thing. It's very much that. Which playing the Mother series actually threw me off with prayer for a little until I read the guide, because I'm so used to Earthbound's prey mechanic that is really only useful at the very end of the game.
One thing,
right? But so this I like kept not using it, and then when you would get what was the name of the attack where you'd get grabbed by an certain the like torso had that mechanic where it would grab.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it, but
stuck.
Yeah, and you'd basically the screen where everything was black is now blue, and if you won't realize it at first that like you can't just keep attacking. At that point, you need everybody in the party to pray to escape that. So I thought for a while that even that was the only use for prayer until I really waited longer than I should have to go to the guide. It's difficult, but yeah. So you mentioned kind of by hook or crook managing that inventory to visualize for the listeners the inventory system. So Matt kind of said it in passing as well, but of these 5 playable characters, you can only put 3 of them in a party max at a time. You can run around, you could do all 5 of them solo, but probably going to run into some difficulty with not just navigating through the mansion, but combat as well. With inventory, there are 5 main, no, I'm sorry, 4 main slots, right? With inventory for each character?
Yeah, each character has 4 slots, then they're divvied up.
So the first slot is always their key item, period. Then there are 2 slots that can be used to pick up items throughout the world. So this might be wooden planks that you can use to lay down between a gap in the floor, or rope, or a candle. Then there's a 4th slot, and that is where you can kind of, you don't really equip it, but that would be like your equipped item for combat, right?
Yeah, your weapon. Yeah.
Whatever weapon you might find. So if you watch the movie, you'll see that there's just random suits of armor and things like that, or so it kind of makes sense that this weird mansion would have all of these, battle axes and swords and stuff, but spears. But you end up kind of getting those and equipping those, and those help you in your attacks. But that's it, man. Like, you can move items between party members, which is nice. You also can just drop items in the mansion, and they will always remain where you left them. So, you do kind of get a good layout for the mansion a bit, I found. It's not like the most memorable map, so to speak, but...
No, but there's enough backtracking, and it does a decent job. At least I didn't get far enough, like, towards the end game, but, like, it seemed like it very much sectioned off the game as well. Like, alright, you kind of got done in the main floor of the mansion, and then you moved, like, to the outside, to the outside part. You're blocked. You like turn on the generator, enter this room, and then once you enter that room, you're, like, up in that section of the mansion for a bit. So,
yeah.
You're kind of like invested in these little areas, and because of the mini backtracking that can be found in these areas, you kind of get to know the map a little bit intimately without like needing a map.
Yeah, and you end up kind of knowing like, oh right, I left that thing in that room. I can go back for it at some point.
Yeah, this game did what Skyrim couldn't on a PS3.
Right? Exactly. You can leave inventory on the ground. The nice thing about that was like, for example, if I tended to kind of do what you did, but my team of 3, I optimized with who I had in it, and I was using them to solve most of the puzzles and move through most of the mansion and do most of the leveling. And then my 2 squad, I'd usually like swap out. Like my 2 squad had Akiko with the remedy. So if I needed to cure something, I'd basically just stand still, swap to that side, and then run across the map. But it was nice in certain instances where I had the 2 parties so separate that I could pick up a broom that was closer to one party when, Asuka had the vacuum in the other party, and I could still get through what I needed to get through. So this game's often been credited as the first survival horror video game. Did you feel dread or fear while you played Sweet Home?
In terms of, I feared death around every corner because it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that regard, yeah. And especially when you think survival horror, especially like old Resident Evil games, like inventory management is an issue. And I just know the entire time playing this, I was like, man, I could use one of those boxes that teleports all the items around the mansion.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, in terms of, like, those mechanics, yes, this feels very much within that genre. Now, as far as, like, jump scares and things like that, they definitely try to do things, but there's only so much you can do on an NES for, like, jump scares and things of that nature.
Yeah, but even still, like, there were
Although, man, it's scary.
Man is scary, yeah. But no, I mean, there were QuickTime events, right? Like, you had to get
Dodge,
out of the way of
a fallen chandelier or a dagger coming out of the wall or a chair. I think a chair one time flew at me.
Yeah. Yeah, they had those, and those, I never failed one, but I think if you fail one, that is death for a character.
You just inflict damage.
Oh,
I got hit. I don't know how. It always went left, right.
That's all I ever did, and it worked every time. So I don't know.
There was one didn't work. I went left one time and it didn't work.
Okay,
but it was just minor damage.
Okay, that's good.
Nothing.
I thought that was like a...
Yeah, it wasn't anything crazy beyond like what you would get like walking through some stuff and not having the proper item. Which even when that wasn't bad.
No, I was surprised about that. There's like random little things in the environment that, like lava.
Who would have? Yeah, who would have thought thorns would hurt you just as much as lava?
But yeah, you don't take much damage. Yeah, I think that was one of the things about, like, in reflection of survival horror, that, yeah, I didn't feel scared. Like, this is not like a scary game. But that idea of, like, having to survive in a horrific element, I think that's the key thing within this, is like, how am I going to survive certain elements of this game? Like, do I, with low health or prey points, every time I'd hear like the little like half step notes that dun 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 coming in, like I would get into a slight panic of like, oh, okay,
Which
I
one?
have really low HP and now I've got a battle. Hopefully I can get all three of them to run or something like that. Also, the first time I got carried off by a spirit, that was pretty unsettling. Did you have that happen to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are little like blue things that kind of flash across the screen, and if they grab one of your characters, they just transport them from the party to a set location in the mansion somewhere, and then you've got to navigate back to wherever your party is or go find the other squad you had somewhere else. And the first time that happened, I was like, oh no, like I thought a character died at that point, but thankfully they just got transported somewhere else. Do you want to talk a bit about the bug you ran into? Or was it a bug, or was it
I think it was just death. It was unlucky. Yeah, I don't want to say halfway. I would definitely say I was probably more than a third of the way through. Yeah, and I was kind of going through it. Again, I was using a guide. So like when I say something took me 90 minutes to do, it was probably 60 to 90 minutes of actual like gameplay. But no, I walked into a room and it was like a trap room, and I had three people in a team, and it was like, they were carrying they're not only their key items, but key items I needed to progress the game, like keys.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, they fell, and where they fell and the way the room was configured, I couldn't rescue them, because if normally they fall, you can like rescue them like by getting right next to them and hitting team again and like bring them up. You kind of learn that early with like the planks when you're putting them down. But no, they were stuck and they were like in the middle of limbo, and I couldn't get them back. And the last time I had saved, because I was kind of using the guide, I wasn't really thinking much about it. I had lost like 90 minutes, and my will to play it was I was so defeated.
No, and this is not an easy game to, like, it is, stressful is not the right word, because it's not that intense. Like, it's not that much of an...
It's tedious, though.
It's very tedious.
That's the problem. I was, like, thinking, like, all the inventory stuff that I had, like, all the management that I was doing, because this was right after the logs part and using the boat to...
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, I need to get the logs back there, and I don't know where that party was, and getting that party back to where they needed to be. It's like, fuck, man, this is like not a fun 60 minutes either.
No, like, and that's something where like backtracking is essential in this game, and it's something where you think of other games that include backtracking, and like the act of getting from point A to point B in Super Metroid is fun, right? Like you are sprinting, you're shooting, you're rolling, you're bombing. There's like things to do, and like this, it's just the same combat. And like while there's different enemy types, there's still only a handful of enemies you're going to encounter when you're back. Like,
and then it's just palette swaps too towards the end game. It's not even like unique things like zombie. But one hangs upside down.
Yeah, right, yeah. This one's got a blue shirt instead of a green one.
Man.
Yeah.
I can only laugh so many times seeing man pop up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was where this game kind of fell short for me. Like, I like this a lot, and I think that playing through it I encourage for anybody with this. You know, if you like Resident Evil, if you like survival horror games, I think you should play this. But I do think you should play it with patience. Like, give yourself like a month to play. You know what I mean? Like, don't.
Yeah.
Doing it in like a sitting kind of stinks. Like, because it's a different experience, right? Like, you're reading a guide, your TV. You know what I mean?
I will say that like chunk. I think I broke it up slightly, but that chunk was in a day, and I was like still going strong. Okay. I felt pretty good about it. Again, using a guide, so I never like if I felt like the stuck, I could read and do whatever. But no, I was going strong, and I do think if I had started it a little bit earlier, I would have gotten the like, all right, let's pick it back up. Let's do this. We'll do some like 20-minute chunks, get back, and then we'll probably hit that groove again. Now, because I only played a third of the game, it was maybe starting to feel repetitive, although I was going strong. I don't know how. I could see where that also sticks around for the next 2/3.
Yeah, because like I don't know. The puzzles get different, but the other problem with the puzzles in this game is like a lot of them are like really esoteric and difficult to figure out without a guide. I will say that I think really when you pull this back, once I started looking at this as a Dragon Quest clone in its own fashion, right? Like, because the idea of backtracking and then whoops, random encounter, backtrack, whoops, random encounter, it's no different than grinding in a field in Dragon Quest, right? And like fetch quest where you need to go to this field and bring back this key, like all of that stuff that you do in other RPGs. It's no different than that. It's just we're not looking at it in the same lens, right? Because we're looking at it from the Resident Evil lens, and I think that's where we're comparing it. But like really, you need to look at something like Pokemon, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy. Those types of games are more of an influence on this than anything else. And when I started to do that, it's a little bit more approachable, but it's still like, let me say this. To that effect, when you look at something like a Final Fantasy or a Dragon Quest, those games are not easy, but all you got to do is just spend some time in a field for a couple of hours and you're leveling up and they get a lot easier, right? So the fear and the scary part about something like Sweet Home can be negated by you just playing it for longer and just doing the same thing over and over again. But then the puzzle side of it comes in, and that's the part that's tricky. Some of them are weird. Like, there are clues right on the wall. There's things you learn. Like, I learned that blood melts copper. Did you learn any other life lessons while playing?
No, the blood and the copper one was a life lesson for sure. I found out the hard way you can only walk over a plank 3 times before it breaks. I guess that's another. It wasn't necessarily a puzzle, but an item you use early and often.
Yep, I learned that as well.
Rope is very effective against armor. That's another life lesson.
Yep, I never would have thought that, but sure, I guess. Why not? Yeah. From this, how do you see the game directly influencing Resident Evil?
I mean, it's all there. It's just it's Resident Evil's real-time combat, but like even times, like, not that I've played a lot of like original Resident Evil, but you know how many times like playing those briefly that I've said like, man, if I had 2 more inventory slots, this would be so much better. Yeah. I found myself saying very similar things there as the backtracking. Also, like, the sectioning off as well, like, the way the game progresses. Like, yeah, you might end up backtracking all the way back, but, like, you're mostly going to stay in these little areas until you're kind of done with them. And it's a matter of managing the 5 items you need within the area. So I guess in this game, there's leveling, which you can out-level your enemies. In Resident Evil, you're kind of like, it's like a tax to fight almost, and then you will run out of that currency eventually, unlike in Sweet Home. But no, I mean, you see it for sure. They're different. I mean, one's on NES, one's on PlayStation, but like all the bones are there.
Yeah, I mean, Resident Evil was conceived by Sweet Home's director, Takuro Fujiwara, as a remake of Sweet Home. First for the Super Famicom, then to the PlayStation. And in the first iteration on PlayStation was meant to be a 3D first-person game before it eventually settled into the third-person game that we know. When you look at the two literally, directly, Chris Redfield brings a lighter. Jill Valentine has a lockpick. Rebecca Chambers is a field medic. It's right there. There's Barry and Wesker as well, which don't fully line up with, but there were 5 characters, right?
I'm pretty sure I saw Wesker the Vacuum at some point.
Well, yes, but also if you jump forward.
Maybe that was only the director's cut. Sorry,
might have been director's cut. Yeah, but if you jump further into 2001. Maybe Asuka's vacuum went on to inspire Nintendo when they were looking for an item that Luigi might carry into a mansion. Maybe Tecmo borrowed Taguchi's camera when it dreamt up Fatal Frame,
Yep. Forgot about Fatal Frame, yeah.
The one thing I liked about this as well was just the presence of ghosts in this house, in this lore, in this whatever. And it made me hope and wish for more ghosts in Resident Evil. Did you get that at all? Do you want more ghosts in Resident Evil? I know I'm kind of jumping around to where Village left off, but what do you want to see next in Resident Evil?
I don't know. I don't know, because I'm really conflicted after recent game that came out for Resident Evil. No, I don't know. I feel like Resident Evil in some way has kind of touched a lot of genres. The main series might not have, but some of the spin-off games have done various different things. It's kind of tough to see when you ask what do you want to do for Resident Evil and they haven't done it yet. The more spooky it gets, the less chance there probably is of me playing it. But Resident Evil 4 was supposed to go supernatural at first, and it kind of turned. Made a left-hand turn out of that into what that game ended up becoming. But no, I don't know what I want from Resident Evil. I don't know what I want from survival horror really anymore. There's so many ways of doing it now. I feel like the new catchy way of doing it is big monster always chases you and you're kind of defenseless against it. It seems to be the current trend that started with Outlast and has been beaten to submission now. With Resident Evil doing it as well twice in their remakes. I don't know. But that's where I don't get paid to do that. Creators do. So show me the way.
Did you like Sweet Home overall?
I did. I'm very sad that I just got discouraged. So I was sitting there, had a college football game on. Playing along, I had to walk through my phone right here, and I just lost, I just saw what happened. I tried 3 different ways of rescuing it, and I saw not only where my save state was, but where the actual save. I knew I had not saved it for a while, and when I finally booted back to the save, because there's no going back, there's only one save slot. Saw where I was at, I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
All good.
That's a bummer.
I might go back.
No, I'm with you. I really, really liked it. I'm glad. This was. Now I forget. Was this the first game? No, Rogue was the first game I put on the list for this year. But this was very closely a second. And this was the game when I was building our list for season 11. In secret before revealing it to you and Mark. This was the game that I put down on the list, and then 4 or 5 months later. It came up again, I remembered it or whatever, and I was like, oh man, I should put Sweet Home on the list. And I opened up the list to put it in, typed it in my little note, and then scrolled back. I'm like, what else do I have on this thing? And Sweet Home was the second game on the list. I was like, oh, okay.
There it is. You had to scroll through your list. Okay, there's the joke. I was waiting to see where I could deliver it. You just said scroll the list. There it is.
Yeah. Hey,
the first
Season
iteration
12.
was what game wasn't on the list, but I feel like I've used that one a few times already, so...
No, this one hit twice, so I knew it was important to get it out there. And one that like again, like we hear like this is the birth of survival horror, but like what does that mean? You know, and like how does it translate? How did it work on the NES? So I'm glad that we got to see it.
You know what? I think the cool thing is like, yeah, it's on the NES, but like, it's not like the mechanics were half baked and they had a remnant of a good idea, and it was something that Resident Evil saw through. I think this game does some stuff better than Resident Evil. I gun to my head, what's the answer to what I just said? I don't know, and maybe exploration, maybe maybe like area design or whatever, because I feel like a lot of Resident Evil games you get sewer, lab, and whatever the first area is. This one didn't really have a lab. I don't think you ever go to one, or I think there was some creativity there.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. But yeah.
But like I just think generally though, like it's not like this was not like because sometimes you had that original title that you just can see the vision and it just didn't execute it necessarily, and then it's like the number two or another developer does it better. This one, I think it hit everything it wanted to hit. Is just technology allowed new things.
I think that's the thing why the remake was even proposed to begin with, right? Is like they were so limited with the Famicom. Like, imagine what we could do with this in 3D. Yeah, it's a shame we didn't get it. I don't know. Resident Evil's good, but like Resident Evil became so much bigger, right? Like it's this corporation and all of that stuff around.
Yeah, I mean, the first one, sure, there's a lab, but then 2 and 3 is kind of like 2.5 in a way, and 4 goes in another direction, and then they bring it 5, right? Swings it back.
This is like so self-contained. It's a one-off story. There's a beginning and an end. There's characters you meet and like characters that don't make it in the movie at least, but also in the game. Which that was one scene, the Yamamura scene. Seeing that in the film and then done in 8-bit was fantastic. Like they nailed that part. I thought it looked really cool. But yeah, I don't know. It's a shame that this one can't. Because I think this one's gone forever, right? Like the only way you're playing this is to go online, find the fan translate, like
probably,
or learn Japanese and get the Famicom cart. But
was there ever a sequel to the movie in Japan?
No, it just was like one and done. And even it was never released on DVD. It was only ever released on VHS. Like it's gone.
Well, damn.
Yeah, but I think it's worth seeing. I think it's worth checking out, worth playing. It's fun too. Like I didn't the first few minutes you're kind of touching it. You're like, this is not like I didn't expect this to be an RPG. I was like kind of and almost turned off at the beginning. Where I was like, crap. And then the more I played, the more I like enjoyed exploring the mansion, enjoyed combat, enjoyed seeing what the game had to offer.
Maybe it was because I've seen screens of it where I'd seen brief gameplay before actually, and I knew it was an RPG.
I don't know why I didn't. I don't even know what I thought it would be.
I knew. Talk about the inventory system in Resident Evil. It's like, all right, let's rewind that back to the NES era when it's like really no favors, no quality of life. The quality of life's not even invented yet because we don't know what quality of life is back in that era. Exactly. Like, so it's like, oh boy, what am I going to be put up against here?
But at the same time, the stuff they were able to do on the NES is impressive. Like,
no, it's good. It's really good.
The memory allocation to know where items were dropped. I mean, that, like you pointed out,
a save at any step too. Like that's impressive.
That was great.
I mean, that's password, and your password gets you into the room with maybe some of the items.
Right.
For that to be like any step is fair game, save. Yeah, one slot. But I mean, hell, again, there's SNES games that only rely on passwords.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Matt, we've reached the point in the episode where it's time to rank Sweet Home. On the list, Listeners, if you want to follow along with the list, you can do so at thefreecheese.com/thelist.
I quite liked this game, but then I started looking towards the top, and I was like, no, and I find myself scrolling a little bit.
How far are you scrolling?
Not far, but I thought I was higher. Now, but I had to scroll, I think. At least to center some numbers up.
No, I'm with you. I was like kind of up there, and then I saw like Parasite Eve, and I'm like, no, I like Parasite Eve better than this.
Like a Phasmophobia. I'm like thinking of like similar type of things, but like Phasmophobia better. The Deadly Prem, for what that is, that's I think a better game.
I think I like this over Glaylancer.
Okay.
Which for the listeners is currently our 36.
Yeah,
I don't know if I like it better than NBA Street.
I'm like kind of like keep going down the list, or go back up the list a little bit. I'm looking at 31. I was like, there's no way this is better than Metal Gear Solid 2. And so I think Glaylancer is a good like starting point around there.
Would you go above NBA Street?
See, those are the NBA Street and Tricky, and then even Double Dasher is like the perfect pick up and play games. That's a tough thing to rate them against. I don't know. I think I like NBA Street better, but I think it's just if you ask me on a day, like, you want to play a game NBA Street, or do you want to do inventory management for an hour?
Yeah.
It's a tough ask there.
You know what's weird?
I have a problem putting it over Mass Effect 2.
But then, like, I'm with you. I wouldn't want to put it above Metal Gear 2, but I would put it above Tokyo Jungle or Papers, Please. And we've got both of those higher than MGS 2.
I don't know about Papers, Please.
What about 999?
I think I'd rather do the visual novel.
Okay, so if you're not above that, not above Papers, Please, what about Tokyo Jungle?
I think I like Tokyo Jungle better.
All right, I figured I'd try the leapfrog and see what happened.
The one you have to play is with a guide. That's not a bad thing. Earthbound, I highly recommend playing with a guide that comes with the game.
Yeah.
But like there is the obscureness to it. But again, like how much at some point you can't blame the game, but it's the limitation. You have to realize like there's limitations compared to what some of these games have, like with a PS2
for
chip.
sure.
Yeah, like it's not. I don't think it's the game's fault. I think the game's I don't want to say a masterpiece, but damn near great game on the NES for what it accomplished on that console.
Like, I would put, I don't know, maybe we're not there yet, but I would put this over Dragon Quest 1. You know what I mean? Like, if we're looking at its contemporaries on the NES, like, I think it...
That's someone that didn't play Dragon Quest, but I'm not real big into, like, that type of genre either, so...
I don't know that I'd put it over Final Fantasy 1, but I don't know, maybe that's nostalgia talking, right? So, I don't know, those aren't in the list anyway, but to your point, like...
I do have this over Beautiful Joe. I know I'd said not above Metal Gear Solid 2, but if you're aiming in that general area, Beautiful Joe has those frustrating boss battles from time to time that I'm thinking about. There's some frustrating rooms too.
Yeah, that's fair.
Good game. Still a good game. There's nothing wrong with it, per se. There's nothing wrong with Sweet Home either, per se. But at the same, I know I'm saying obscure puzzles, but like Resident Evil has this obscure puzzles. Like I can't. It's part of the genre. Reading notes left behind to see what you have to do next. Like maybe you don't need a key for a certain diary in Resident Evil, but You have
to be respectful,
right?
Yeah. Is it the new 30?
I think I like it at 30. It's weird,
but
this whole list is weird.
Every time I look at this list, it makes zero sense to me. So let's keep it going by putting Sweet Home as the new 30 in between Tokyo Jungle.
Just for context for the list, 2 weeks ago we had Tyler one. The fact he opened it up and just laughed at it, I think that says everything
that was
about where this is headed.
Yeah. There it is, Sweet Home, number 30. I don't know what else to say.
Nothing else to say, I don't think.
One more thing to say. Listener, you can go to thefreecheese.com right now. And you can check out our monthly write-up for all of October, announcing all of the games we're playing this month, and the theme of the month, etc., etc. If you don't feel like doing that, although you should, you can come back next week, episode 526, where we discuss Resident Evil 4, the remake. Until then, thank you, Matt. Thank you, listener, for listening. Go play Sweet Home, and we'll see you next week.